5, 4, 3, 2.
You're listening to Monroe versus the podcast, and we're here to be thinking about death and sad stuff.
Welcome to another episode of Knives Monroe versus the podcast. I'm Knives Monroe. How you guys doing? Hopefully you're doing well. Today is a special episode for a variety of reasons. Number one of which, this is a live episode. Don't worry, I'm not going to get into the habit of doing this. It's just something I like to do with family. Last time I did a live episode was last Saturday, and we did it with Claire. And this is the first time ever, for some random reason, I can't believe this is for, I've barely had my brother, my blood brother, same mom, same dad. Jeremy Thomas is joining me for the podcast. Jeremy, how you doing, brother?
Pretty good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. This is going to be fun, man. And it's so weird. Like, it takes all this pageantry for you and me to talk, to have a conversation. So it's going to be a good one. You look good. How's the family?
You too, man. Good. We're great, actually. Things honestly couldn't be better right now. Minus the virus that's going on.
I almost forgot. Thanks for reminding me. Same here, man. I've been rewatching the HBO show The Leftovers, and it's like this weird masochistic reminder to remind myself that me and my family, we're the lucky ones, I'm so blessed that Claire and I have our jobs. They're virtual, remote jobs, and we have a refrigerator full of food, and our kids are still enthusiastic about life, and so we're very lucky, man. And fortunately, no one's sick. Everybody still has their health, and it sounds like the same thing's going for you, and I'm really happy about that, because these times right now, let's be honest, like this is the time to invest in entertainment and distraction, because as soon as you turn on the news, like, your face starts melting. Yeah, man. So I'm glad you're doing well. I'm getting questions like, how are we doing this and all that on Facebook. We have a topic, by the way. There's a topic. My brother wants to get into a debate, and so that's what we're gonna do. But
debate, but yeah,
a creative debate, sure, whatever. I'll try not to be a dickhead about it, but from time to time, I'm gonna go into the Facebook Live, and I want this to be a participation from the crowd. So for anybody out there, if you care, leave a comment. We're gonna get to it, and I appreciate you guys on this Saturday night. So it's gonna be a good one. All right, man. So real quick, I kind of just want to set the context on why we did this to begin with. Out of the blue, interrupt me anytime, because when we do the podcast and we make our points, I'm going to give you time to speak and so on, and I'm not going to interrupt you and all that. And if you want to pull any links, feel free in the comment section to send us a link if you want.
Okay.
And we'll go ahead and share that. We'll stream that as well. My brother texts me out of the blue, and he sends me a video about the Zack Snyder cut from Justice League. And
you there?
Yeah. And can you hear me okay?
Oh, no. You there?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Okay, now I can hear you.
Okay,
yeah.
So that's going to happen, I guess. It's just the internet, something I can do about it. He sends me a video about the Snyder cut. And he says, watch this, because maybe in a few years or in a few months, you're going to be so wrecked in that you were one of these Snyder Cut deniers. And I said, Jeremy, who cares? Why are you clinging to this? And we got into a texting fight, I guess. I did stop everything that I was doing and focus on this text conversation, but I never got emotional about it, if I'm being honest.
Oh, yeah.
And it bothered me because I was like, why are we talking about this? This is like a wrestling's not fake conversation with someone who doesn't give a shit about wrestling. You know, it's like you're barking up the wrong tree. I don't necessarily care about the Snyder cut. And that'll be my thesis for this whole entire thing as far as I'm concerned, but we'll talk about whether or not it's important. And so you're like, hey, Knives, we're having a creative debate. And I said, we're not having a debate because I didn't give my consent
God damn it.
and say that we're on this, you didn't ask me to have a debate. And I said, if you want to have a debate, we'll have a debate and we'll do it on my show and we'll do it live. And so I'm not going to lie, you called my bluff and here we are. So let's just get into it, man. Can you paint a picture, some context on...
Okay, I got back to you. So.
Okay, just paint a picture. Give me some context on the Justice League,
Fuck.
Batman versus Superman, the Snyder Cut, and why it matters to you first and foremost. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, cool. So I want you to set the context on the Snyder Cut, Batman versus Superman, Zack Snyder, whatever you want. I want to give you a couple minutes just to lay out the context on why it matters to you.
I guess just the matter of creative choices. I believe, I believe what happened with Justice League and to Zack Snyder and to, unfortunately his daughter, who, if you're a fan, you know what happened. It was an injustice, to both of them, both Zack and his daughter, to not at least finish the film that he wanted to make, and I know there's a lot of directors that have gone through that, where the studio just tampers with the product. And in my opinion, and a movie that has proof where a studio should just take a step back and is Joker. I mean, that was a full-on Todd Phillips, Joaquin Phoenix Joker take movie. And that's what I loved about it. And that element, I feel, should not be taken away. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you, man.
I see that you kind of paused.
No, I hear you. So just do your thing. Keep talking. It's fine. I think the stream's gonna come in and out. It's just like an internet thing, but it is what it is. So yeah, but you should be able to hear me okay. Don't pay attention to the stream. Pay attention to the Hangout, and we'll just take it from there. But yeah, you're talking about Todd Phillips and the Joker.
Yes. The studio did not tamper with that. They gave the green light, which is, yes, I agree with that. And that's good. But at the same time, they didn't have faith in the movie, which is why Todd Phillips got to pocket way more money than anybody anticipated,
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's what most studios should do. Just, if a director has a vision and a writer has a vision and editors have a certain vision, let them finish it and have faith in the people and the professionals you've hired.
Mm-hmm.
That's all, in my opinion, what it's about. Because I mean, it was just an honest injustice. It just really was.
Gotcha. Okay, so you've set it up great. So I guess the way I feel about this is sometimes movies are bad, and that's just it. Sometimes things aren't fair. Life sucks. And I'm not talking about the tragedy with Zack Snyder's daughter. I'm not talking about just that. That is obviously inexplicable, terrible, and awful. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when it comes to business, when it comes to art, when it comes to commerce, sometimes your final product isn't what you wanted it to be. That's just the way it goes. It's kind of like, for me, like this whole Snyder Cut thing, and why I don't care, and I know you do, and I know you think it's real. Since it's not real to me. and it's one of those. I think it's theoretical, you know. So I'm taking this stance because we're having a debate, and in my core, I don't care. Like I've said a few times, but I will take the stance on historically. So when we look back at this, we'll see, you know, who's being favored when it comes to history, and I will say I don't believe there is a Snyder cut, but I will also say that when you have that conversation, how long before we're having a conversation about he fucked up the movie and so he needs a second chance. And in art and movies, you almost don't get a second chance. Once you click upload or once the movie's out there, it's out there. That's going to be the version, right? Supposedly there's a butthole cut from Cats. But guess what?
I heard about that.
But guess what? That's not the version we got, right? So it's like there's this Snyder cut. People make it it sounds like it's very misleading, the hashtag release the Snyder cut, as if there's a Blu-ray that is finished and it's like, come on, WB, let us upload it. I don't think it's that simple. So what is the history of the Snyder cut as far as you're concerned?
Man, I can't hear you.
I don't know why. Can you see me okay? I'll be honest with you. I like doing the live stream. It's super fancy, but I more so want to have, this is a podcast. I care more about the audio, right? So I'll take off this live stream right now and we will have this conversation. I'll upload this after the fact. Is that something you want to try to do?
Say that again, because
this is a podcast. I care more about the audio component than I do the live stream. Yeah. If the live stream's fucking this up, then I don't want to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, can you do like a live podcast?
No.
Like the audio, just audio?
No.
No.
I can, but people aren't going to be seeing our pretty faces, and so
yeah.
That's. Let me try something. I have an idea.
Okay.
Can you send me via text a good photo of yourself? I'm gonna do an audible live right here.
Oh man, that's hard. But
send me a good photo. It doesn't matter. I don't care what it is. And I'm gonna do the same for me.
I don't even think I have.
And I'll do a live stream, except I'll do a live stream with just our faces.
No, that's too funny of a video picture.
All right, so I'm already doing it.
Oops.
Just text it to me. It's got to be simple.
All right, yeah, this one's fine, I guess.
There we go. We're still live right now, so people are just gonna have to bear with us. They're gonna get a different version of this. I just think, like, I'll be honest, I'm streaming in 4K on my end. I just think it is what it is.
All right, I sent you one.
Okay. I got it. Let's do this. This is what I call an audible.
Audible. Omaha.
Boom. Okay. This is kind of funny to me.
Yeah, I like people
do you see
commenting.
Do you see what I'm doing right
cool.
now? Do you see the kind of like the difference of what I'm doing? I don't know if it's on the stream yet. I think it is. Okay, cool. So people are going to see a picture and they're going to hear our audio. And I think that should make our lagging a little better. And if people don't like it, I don't really give a fuck. So it is what it is. Reconnection successful.
Yeah.
My friend Trent Knox, shout out to Trent, because I've experimented with him so many times with streams, and so he's taught me a lot, so I owe him. All right, so Snyder Cut, why does it matter to you?
matters to me because I feel like um, not only does Zack Snyder go through this, but I feel like everybody has. You know what I mean? Where whether it's a project or something you hold dear, somebody comes and ruins it, and that sucks. So this movement where these people finally rise, and it is because of the internet as well, is amazing to me. It honestly is, and you're kind of seeing a crowd shift when it comes to Zack Snyder and his film and his art. It's sort of kind of like Rocky 4, when you change the crowd, in Russia. It sort of feels like that, and that's great, and I'm all for that.
Okay, so describe to me when the Justice League movie came out,
Hmm.
and I mean, what's the history of the Snyder Cut? Like, what started this, and how long after this movie came out, or was it before that you noticed that this conversation was happening?
Uh, as soon as Zach left the project, as soon as you heard that he was stepping down and Joss Whedon was coming in, that's when I was like, I'm scared. And I even told you I was scared. And when we even saw the final trailer, I was like, do you think he's going with Zach's vision? Like, does it feels like it? And then most of the footage that was shown in the trailers you didn't get.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they advertised it as a Zack Snyder movie
Mm-hmm.
when in fact it wasn't. It was not.
So how long before it isn't a Zack Snyder movie? Because he directed the movie, he directed the actors.
Now we'll get this. Like, me being a Zack Snyder fan, and also just looking at the evidence and rewatching that movie. I've seen that Justice League movie maybe 3 times in its entirety, and that's all that I needed. But there was maybe 10 to 20% of that film is what Zach shot.
And how do you know that?
Uh, I've seen a lot of videos, and I've seen people break it down, and you can also put it together with the behind the scenes of it, because the behind the scenes that they released, they didn't release any video of when Henry Cavill had his mustache as Superman. They just released all the things that. And I mean, right away with Superman's mustache, that's every shot that you can tell there's CGI in his mustache is obviously not Zack Snyder's. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're fine.
Oh, okay,
man.
cool. Sorry. I didn't know if you could still hear me.
Yeah, yeah.
It's obviously not Zack's. Is what he shot. You know what I mean? And that's majority of Superman's runtime.
Okay, so you said a bunch of stuff, but you didn't say how you know that Zach only shot 20% of the movie. Where does that figure comes from? Is that a gut feeling, or is that a fact?
It's an over exaggeration, right? He probably shot maybe 30%, right?
But where do you get that hunch?
Well, in the beginning, you can already tell right away.
No. Not you can already tell. Who said that? Where did that information come from?
Zack Snyder on his Vero account. There's many things that fans have asked directly, like, did you write this? Did you write that? Like that little Russian scene with that Russian family. You know what I'm talking about?
Russian family. Oh,
yeah.
I think towards the end.
Huh?
Towards the end of the
yes.
movie. I was gonna say towards the end of the picture, like
yeah, that's all Joss Whedon. And Zach came out and said that. He said, "I have no idea what you guys are talking about." He did not write.
Can we both admit that that's 5% of the movie that's in the movie? This Russian family bit. Now here's the thing: we're in the weeds here. This is the weeds, and by the weeds I mean, we're talking about little specific things that like don't amount to a big picture. Like we're getting in hardcore nerd. Like you've had to have seen Justice League many times.
Well, I mean, with Superman's mustache alone, like that. I mean, you yourself,
So let me,
how much would you say is CGI mustache?
I mean,
And there isn't. Like, how much percentage would you say? You know,
of the movie, the entire movie.
of Superman's mustache being CGI'd.
I want to say
Does one outweigh the
30.
other?
I'll say
You know?
30%. That's my. I've only seen the movie a couple of times.
Yeah.
I want to say 30%. But also, so who's accountable there? Couldn't Henry Cavill shave his mustache? This is Joss Whedon's fault.
Well, I feel now this is another story, but when it comes to Henry Cavill and with that mustache is I feel there was a sense of commitment when it came to Mission Impossible and Tom
Obviously,
Cruise. And I don't know if you
obviously.
heard that Tom Cruise actually got hurt, so they had to postpone that movie and wait for him to heal
Okay.
and to go back and redo that movie. And that's why he had to keep the mustache because he wanted to be committed to that movie, which was the finished product. So Henry Cavill, and you know, in my opinion, in which I kind of took it that way in his interviews too. If I don't know if you've seen his interviews, but he kind of seemed a little. Actually, in one interview, he said, "I don't know why we had to go back to reshoots and reshoot scenes that were already finished." You know, he said that himself.
Uh huh.
So I sensed a kind of like he wasn't as committed to what the Justice League was going to be to what Mission Impossible was going to be. So he'd rather be committed to a movie that was actually a finished product than a movie that wasn't.
Hold that thought. Um, Pulling another audible here, and I hope it's okay with you. But in the comments, somebody that's on your side, and I'm hoping that he has facts.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Christian Blake, a man that I've wanted to have on the podcast just one on one. But looks like he might be joining the battle. And I just want to make sure that you're okay with that. So I sent him a link, and he may join soon. Christian, if you're hearing this live podcast, please let me know when and if you enter the chat. I'd appreciate that. And if anybody else is interested, let me know. Okay, so let me just say, from listening to you very carefully, there's a lot of I feel, there's a lot of in my opinion, but when I ask if you have facts, it doesn't sound like you have any. And I feel like if we're talking about something that isn't, what's the word I'm going for? Conjecture. Everything sounds like conjecture to me. And I feel like there's a false narrative behind the release the Snyder Cut movement that people assume a variety of things. People assume that the cut is finished and that it's good. People assume that it's vastly superior than the theatrical cut. But there's no evidence to suggest this. People also assume that Joss Whedon went out to ruin it. If you are asked, I have a question for you. If you are asked, Jeremy, here's this accident that happened in Zach's family. It's terrible. He can't finish the job. He's shot basically most of the movie. He has an edit. Can you finish this movie? What do you do?
I would say, well, we got to finish this movie for Zach. And the thing is I don't even think Josh Whedon had an entire say in it at all. He was micromanaged, hardcore.
I'm sorry, how do you know that?
Because in the beginning of the movie, when just the very intro, there's a homeless man with a cardboard box, a piece of cardboard box, and it said, "I tried."
Okay.
And I think that was very.
So that this is another, I think, right? Do you hear what I'm saying here?
I mean, I'd look at that as an Easter egg, if anything.
So, but that's also your opinion, right? That's not a fact. That's not a fact. So,
Not yet.
So you're using creative choices in the movie as evidence of Joss Whedon's intent, as evidence of him being micromanaged. You're using it as evidence of the Snyder Cut. What is there and what isn't there? But the movie is a subjective piece of art. It's not evidence. Do you agree with that?
Well, I mean, yes and no. Yes, because, I mean, it's I mean, it's possible, right? But no, more
What's
no,
what's
because
possible?
can you say that again?
What's possible?
Re-say what you said right now a while
You're
ago.
using the movie. You're using Justice League. The subject in a movie is a subjective piece of art. You're using it as evidence
Okay.
on the
Th-
quality of the
Yeah, yeah.
Snyder cut, and you're using it as evidence on Joss Whedon, his intent, and that he was micromanaged. And it just sounds like a bunch of this
So
that you're saying, that I can't talk about what Momoa has said and other people, but it sounds like what you're saying to me is a bunch. It's emotional, right? Like it's a bunch of, this is what I think, a bunch of theory, right? Where are the facts? Because you can't use the movie itself. I mean, or change my mind. Like, how can you use the movie as evidence when it's a subjective piece of art? And every film, almost every American blockbuster, has multiple hands on it because it's a collaborative medium.
yeah.
You know, there's a great video on YouTube called How Star Wars, the original 77 Star Wars, was saved in the edit. And if it
Mhm.
wasn't for, I think it was George Lucas's wife and others who helped make that version of the movie more cohesive and better, and like the pacing was right, maybe that wouldn't have been the smash that it was. Christian, I just saw that you joined this conversation, buddy. I need you to help Jeremy out here because he's
I don't
drowning.
need
I'm
help.
just kidding.
No, I know.
But you're muted, brother. So feel free to unmute yourself, and we'll continue this live stream real fast.
It's crazy though. But to answer your question really quick about the whole the evidence, I mean, this specific movie, I think you can use it as evidence
Oh,
because
why this movie and why not other movies? Like, I don't understand that. Why this movie?
no matter what, like you said, if Zach wasn't able to finish it, it's an unfinished movie.
I never
And I
said that.
know, huh?
I never said that.
Well, I mean, because you use the analogy of like, what do I do if he had to leave and step down and I had to finish
Right,
the
right.
movie?
Mm-hmm.
So it's unfinished, right?
Right.
So it's an unfinished movie, man. Like not with the original director's choice of saying this is it, and you know what? Fine, we have to abandon this project.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Hold that thought, because I think
mhm.
Christian is now joined the conversation. Christian, can you hear me? How you doing? Okay, buddy. Let me know. You go ahead and interject. I can't hear you right now, but at the top right of this hangout, there's a gear icon, and you can see where your audio is coming from and your headphones as well. So I hope that helps. So one thing that we talked about in our text conversation, Jeremy, is I believe that these fans are entitled. And you're saying, yeah, this is what you said in the text. You said, yeah, but everybody's entitled, and it's not wrong to be entitled. It's okay. That's this country is founded on people bitching to get what they want. What's wrong with that? It sounds like this movie was so bad for hardcore nerds, and they can't stomach the injustice, to use your word, on how they didn't get the version that they wanted, the way they wanted it. And I mean, try to justify to me this entitlement, because it just sounds like bitching to me. It's not fair. He didn't get to edit the version he wanted. We all know why, and it's a tragedy. And so, guess what? In a football team, when someone breaks their leg, they get swapped out. And sometimes they lose that game, right? Sometimes they win that game. And this one, let's just call it an overall net loss, right? Justice League financially, the universe kind of sort of died, maybe, as far as like the fire of the universe. And so it's just kind of hard for me to care, like, because objectively speaking, when it comes to business, sometimes things are bad and you just move on. Like, what would it take? Say there was no Snyder cut. We'll never get it in some universe. Maybe this is that timeline. How do you move on?
Oh, future Zack Snyder projects. I mean, I honestly am a big fan of him. I mean, you can call me a fanboy, whatever, but he honestly really touched my heart when it came to that type of entertainment and type of just movies overall. You know what I mean? The fact that you can put a superhero genre and kind of try and make it into a real film, sort of like Joker. I loved it and I was all for it. And especially it was a time in my life where I'm transitioning from a kid to an adult. So yeah, you know, it was a big part of my life, especially around the early 20s. You know.
The early 20s. And so do you feel like, have you seen those, like, people say Michael Bay ruined my childhood? Do you feel like that? Do you relate to that in some way? Did Joss
Uh,
Whedon ruin your childhood? Was that what was at stake here?
no, not at all. Not at all. I don't feel that way at all. It's more about the movement. It's more about like even if Zack Snyder had to step down and even if he didn't have half of the movie finished, well, let him come back and let him finish it. And I think that's what it's all about from here on out.
That is the good news. I see that our buddy Christian Blake has joined the conversation. I'm going to introduce him in just a bit. I do want to say to what you just said. I don't know. I've never ran a conglomerate. I've never been a CEO to a giant corporation like Warner Brothers Media or what have you. But I'd imagine if there's a deadline and you have to release a movie, it would probably only take an epidemic like COVID-19 to stop a production or to, pause the distribution of a movie. Like I feel like they were on third and a half base when it came to the edit of the movie and whatever photography they needed to wrap up. I don't know, but it's enough to finish the movie and like go on with the show. Like it's enough, to pause everything and wait so the hardcore fanboys could get the version that they wanted. I cannot help but believe, and I'm going to segue this into Christian Blake coming on, so get ready, buddy. I cannot believe that there's this whole idea that this Snyder cut, and I'm gonna be on my Donald Trump shit here and say the fantasy cut. There's this presupposed idea that it's better than the version that they got. And Zach will go on these panels and say, here's what I wanted to do, but the studio thought it was too gnarly. People then infuse that into this fantasy cut and assume that it's going to be in it. And I don't necessarily know if that's the case. What does Zach have left to finish? And if he has more stuff to finish, then it's not a cut. Then it's him remaking a movie at this point. So that's what I believe. And I kind of want Christian Blake to get on the call here. He supports where my brother Jeremy's coming from. And so, Christian, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I've only heard bits and pieces of what you guys have been talking about, though.
Okay.
Because I was trying to get on this call. It just kind of that he's about it, you're not. And I heard the last little bit what you just said right now.
Yeah.
So I might be on here for a bit and then hop off and then hop back on because my phone. This is the only way I can actually be on here is my phone, and it's about to die. So I'm charging my iPad. Hopefully, I can get back on with that. But so you said that what you just said right now is like, well, if he's going to shoot some stuff, then it's going to be an entirely different movie or something along the lines of that. Like it's not really a different cut. It's something different altogether. You are right. Fans call the movie the Snyder Cut. That's not what Zack Snyder calls it. Zack Snyder calls it Zack Snyder's Justice League, which means that it's not a particular cut of the movie. It's a different movie altogether. And Zach had an idea. He had something that he had written with Chris Terrio. And it was apparently a great script from my understanding. Even people who read it besides Zack Snyder saying himself it was a good script because we can't trust that because that's a biased opinion. It's his own script and Chris's. But from what I've heard, other people have said it was a pretty rad script. It was a pretty cool script and it was a big, big, ambitious project. And so what happened was, as far as the narrative goes, is what happened is that Batman versus Superman didn't do too well. And they were weeks away from shooting Justice League. And the studio looked at Zack and said, okay, that didn't do well. And then they looked at his new script for Justice League, or his original script for Justice League, and were like, if that didn't do well, this surely ain't going to do well. Mm-hmm. So, like, you got to change it. And he was like, okay, I guess. And so he changed it. So the original idea that he had in place for like the movie itself was never even shot.
Correct. And he's
Yep.
Yeah.
and he's confirmed this.
Yeah, it was never shot. Yeah, he absolutely confirmed this, and he confirmed
Yeah.
it at his director's like panel or whatever that he did for
Yeah.
Zero.
The BVS panel.
Yeah, exactly, the BVS panel. Which, by the way, I don't know if you know, but he's gonna go. He's gonna do like a thing tomorrow.
Yes, and
he's gonna
it's
watch
on my
BVS.
birthday. I'm gonna watch it with him.
Yeah, I'm so stoked, dude. 10 a.m. I'm ready.
Yeah.
So he what do you call it? Said that the script ended up getting changed weeks before shooting. They shot that script, which was the rewritten script. And because they shot that script, it was this beefy movie. I'm assuming he has enough footage to cut together a 3-hour and 34-minute movie, as he has blatantly said that that's the runtime, 214 minutes. Yeah,
Yep.
214. And so aside from that, he said that because the movie's pretty much done, I'm assuming VFX aren't done, because I think he even commented on somebody's post in Vero and said the VFX aren't 100%, but the movie's pretty much, it's done. Like, it's cut, it's done, it's ready to go. It just needs some polishing. That makes perfect sense. If he had already made a movie and he showed it to the studio and they watched it and they were like, okay, we told you to rewrite it and this is what you rewrote, we're still not down. So they had him kind of get pushed away, especially under the circumstances that his daughter committed suicide, which was tragic. That, to me, I mean, this is just speculation, but to me, that's kind of a PR move and saying like, hey man, this is a way out. You know, we don't want to fire you. This is a way out. And he's like, all right, cool. He took it, right?
Where do you get that
Where
do you get that speculation from? That's a big, heavy assertion.
Because of how
Here's
much,
here's why I'm dubious
talk to me.
I'm dubious about that. It seems like it's like this is taken on its own lore and mythology. This idea of this cut, right? This, whatever the original, it sounds like an assembly cut to me. That's what it sounds like. And you've done it before
yeah, but
too.
he's shown VFX shots.
Certainly from an
Clear
assembly.
VFX, and they're not from the trailers.
So
understood, but it sounds like you're presupposing that this cut was gnarly enough to potentially get fired, and so WB leveraged his daughter's suicide as a convenient way to push him out. Where does this come from?
The fact that he is so vocal about the fact that the movie that is out right now, the movie that you can currently buy either on Blu-ray or digitally, is not his movie. He's like, that's not my movie. Like, that's not the movie that I made. And it seemed like he was kind of okay with the whole ordeal about entrusting Joss Whedon with the project. Honestly, a lot of people hate Joss Whedon.
What are your
I don't think
opinions
he
on
did
Joss
anything
Whedon?
wrong. I think he did what the studio wanted him to do.
yeah, same here.
Okay.
Like that, yeah. He's not like a bad guy that was like, "Oh, I'm gonna mess this movie up." Like,
Yeah,
no,
for
like
sure.
he was hired to do a job, and he did it, and he
Yep.
did it like honestly. This is gonna sound terrible because I support the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League, but he didn't do a bad job considering what you got in the movie. Like, it's pretty good. Like, for being completely reshot. Like, it looks like almost like 70 to 80% of that movie's freaking reshot, and it's okay. It's watchable, you know. I mean, sure, the mustache looks terrible. Some VFX look terrible. Some of the jokes are awful, but it's still watchable, and it made money.
And it's great for the kids, for sure.
It's a Justice League episode in live action.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Let me ask you guys. I don't want to get too far into the weeds here, but what happened to this idea around BVS time that Justice League was going to be a part 1 and part 2? What is this?
Oh, the nightmare sequence.
Okay, but was there ever a part 1, part 2, or was that just an idea, but it never actually materialized?
No, it was confirmed. The studio confirmed that he was going to direct part 1 and part 2.
It was on Infinity War and Endgame. He was supposed to be filming them back to back.
Okay, and
He's
when did
that
not
will be?
When did that not go according to plan? When was that not the plan?
BVS's bad reception.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So this is what happens when you book a title in advance, right?
Yes.
So then,
Yes,
so before photography, probably, right? Before actual principle, that idea was kaput.
Yeah, and that was the original script that I had talked about that him and Chris Terrio wrote. And then all of a sudden, BVS did bad, and they came up to him and said, "Okay, what you have now is not going to work
It's
because
crazy.
obviously Batman versus Superman didn't work, and what you're going to do is even crazier than that. So yeah, let's completely destroy that idea." And there went part 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Okay, so flash forward to now. I'm not up to date, and I also, my big stance here is that I don't care about a Snyder cut because there's too much emotion behind the fans. You said it yourself that Zach does not refer this to the Snyder cut. It's a different movie altogether, is what you called it, and I understand that because he created some sort of assembly cut. He created a draft, for a lack of a better term. It obviously wasn't a final draft, because it still had more stuff to add on it. Where do people get this idea that it's vastly better than the version that the theatrical cut? Where does this come from?
I think I would have to say, like, because I think the most perfect way I can explain his cut, of course, it's not a finished cut, like where all the, like what Christian Blake was saying about the CGI being polished up and all that. Yeah, it's not like that. The closest way I could probably relate it to is when, like, around 2005, 2006. Do you remember when Wolverine Origins got leaked?
Yeah.
That's exactly how I picture the movie looking like.
Okay.
Yes. Like a bunch of deleted scenes. Like when you see deleted scenes of a DVD and the CGI is not just there, but the sound design is, and everything else kind of is. That's probably where it's at.
And I wouldn't mind seeing that cut.
Me neither. Honestly, like at this point, I just want the better story.
So,
but I mean, here's the thing. You said what makes people think that it's better.
Correct.
Honestly, I'm not even going to go on record and saying I think it's going to be better. I don't know what it's going to be. I just know it's going to be a different movie, and I know it's going to be directed by Zack Snyder fully. And in the past, I've liked every other Zack Snyder movie, so I don't see why I wouldn't like this one.
Okay.
Same.
Okay.
I don't know if it's better.
Happens?
It may suck. I don't think it will, but it may. I mean, that would really stink if it came out and it just blew.
So if it sucks, if there's a draft and it gets leaked the way X-Men Wolverine Origins or whatever it's called got leaked, and you guys admit it, you will, if this cut is on Pornhub, you guys are going to watch it. It doesn't matter where it's at. You will find it, right? You will find this edit wherever it is. If it's on Al Jazeera, you guys are gonna watch it. And say it's objectively worse than the version we got. What does this mean? What is the legacy of this movie? And what do you guys? What are your verdicts then?
It's highly unlikely.
This is a coin toss.
Yeah.
This is a coin toss. Yeah. You don't know that it's unlikely. Nobody knows. But let's just say
if I were to put myself there.
Yeah. Which is kind of easy because the version we got was a catastrophe.
Yes.
Right? So just add one more point.
It was a Frankenstein, yeah.
Yep.
And that's being generous. So say the version that is leaked or what have you, and Zach could leak at any time. Anything can get leaked, like any time, and just it's whatever. True. So say it happens and it's not great. What then?
I cry.
Yeah, cry.
And I just, wallow in pity and just be like, I can't believe that it sucked. What else do I do? I mean, you've waited so long for it, and then all of a sudden it just sucks.
Just get ready to get made fun of, like always. Anyway.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Exactly. You're just gonna stay in the same situation, really.
But at least we're subject to change, and can admit it.
Yeah.
So
I will admit, if it sucks, I'm gonna admit, hey, this movie sucked. Like, he messed up big time. What would blow my mind is if it sucked, because to my understanding, he's going to reshoot some stuff. Not reshoot. He's going to shoot additional scenes.
I heard too. Yeah.
Yeah. He wrote it on the slate. So
that source too is actually from what's her name? Chloe Grace, I think. She's like a movie critic. And she says she has.
Well, that source was from Zack Snyder.
Okay. Well, yeah, she said she had certain sources, and usually she's always right. usually.
Yeah, but I mean, he posted himself on Vero. He posted because they had like a release the Snyder Cut contest, like an arts contest.
Yeah, I remember that, the poster, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he had a poster contest, and then there was an arts contest. And the
Okay.
poster contest, like the winner got like these little statues of him.
Oh,
Some
yes.
fan made a bunch of statues of him that it says like "wake the f up" or something
Yeah.
like that, because he's known for saying that.
Yeah.
And then the winner of the arts festival actually got the slate that they used to film the movie Justice League when
Yeah.
he shot it, the whole thing through and through, because they did wrap principal photography and
Yeah.
then they did the reshoots with Joss Whedon. So apparently on that slate, if you look on Vero, it says that under the circumstances that there is more scenes shot, the person who owns this, and I'm paraphrasing, the person who owns this film slate is supposed to be summoned to the set to use the film slate
Yes.
for additional photography under the name Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Yeah, and it was
so that tells you like he's going to shoot more.
Yeah, it was for a specific Martian Manhunter scene, right?
Yes, with Lois Lane and with Batman and I think Wonder Woman.
Well, supposedly Lois Lane.
Yeah, supposedly Lois Lane. It was Martian
Okay.
Manhunter.
You guys
You're
are
right.
obviously have the same sources, and that's interesting.
Yeah.
From my ears, it sounds like okay. So I'm going to introduce a whole new thing here, but stay with me. This is going to be simple. Star Wars is a beloved brand franchise. People love the characters, and the Star Wars controversy starts with The Last Jedi. A very vocal segment of the audience was not a big fan of Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi. People will say things like, that's not what Luke Skywalker would do, or, they completely shat on the lore, or whatever. I don't care. And so here comes, it's kind of like the nuclear heat that Batman versus Superman got. It was divisive, polarizing in that community. And just like the same sort of collateral damage move that Disney did on Star Wars, WB did with Justice League, right? They got involved. And so they hired J.J. Abrams back for Star Wars to make a Star Wars movie, thinking, well, people by and large liked Force Awakens, so they'll like this one too. This is my opinion. I'm not a Star Wars fan, but I think objectively, the Rise of Skywalker is bad. I see that Christian's phone died. He'll join us back.
Okay.
And I wanted to get his opinion on this, but it's fine. The Rise of Skywalker to me is bad in so many different ways. It took the second movie and said, fuck all that, and did something else. It didn't make any sense. And but guess what? That's just what you're left with. The Rise of Skywalker. Christian, your audio's not there, man. Give me a little mic check 1 2.
Mic check 1 2.
Good.
No.
You sound good. So I don't want to talk about like our different opinions on the Rise of Skywalker per se, but I will say that they took basically the toxic fandom of Star Wars, changed the narrative of Star Wars, and so toxic fandom is where I'm coming from. The toxic fandom who did not enjoy the Last Jedi basically hijacked the next movie, and I think the audience basically suffered because of that. Now, Zack Snyder fans, or I don't know if it's DC fans, or I don't know, the lines are blurred. There's toxic fandom in every community. The Beatles had toxic fans. Mark David Chapman killed John Lennon. He was a toxic fan. It's what it is. And so I feel like nine times out of 10, people that are #release the Snyder Cut are toxic fans that are in this sort of, and I'm going to get a little hyperbolic here, are in this kind of PTSD infused denial about the Justice League version that they got, and they can't take it. And so they're holding on to this fantasy. They're holding on to this notion that we didn't get the cut that we deserved, the cut that Zack Snyder's this martyrdom. He's this martyr of, you know, release his cut. This is an injustice. We all deserve better.
Thank you. I love
Sometimes
you.
sometimes there are bad movies and we have to take the L. It happened with Game of Thrones. The final conclusion missed the mark. And I think that's almost not unanimous, but it's pretty. It hurts, and if you're in denial about that, then that's on you. Same thing with The Rise of Skywalker. I think that franchise and the fans deserved better. I think Star Wars is it's in its DNA that it's kind of bad. That's what I believe. I've gone on record saying that before, but I can say that I thought The Last Jedi was really good. And then J.J. Abrams comes in, does some damage control, and says, no, fuck that. I'm going to do my thing. And then it seems like Warner Brothers came in during Justice League. During this time, it is, I can't assert that they capitalized on Adam Snyder's death. I mean, I can't say that. But it seems like they had something to do, and they did it, right? So I want to talk about toxic fans. Both of you guys are release the Snyder Cut guys. Can you, what is a toxic fan, and how do you know if you've become one?
Well, and this is the difference between, being a DC fan and being a Star Wars fan is, DC was made for adults. Star Wars was made for kids. So to me, the backlash for Star Wars sounds like a bunch of angry adults that grew up, a bunch of angry kids that grew up, and maybe they just lost a certain level of appreciation there. I don't know. I haven't seen Rise of Skywalker, by the way, though. So
It's great. It's fantastic.
I haven't seen it, but I did like The Last Jedi, and I wouldn't call myself a big Star Wars fan the way I am a DC or a Harry Potter fan.
Mm-hmm.
But as for DC fans, that those comic books, DC Comics, Detective Comics, were made for adults. They're made for adults. So when you see this mature Man of Steel and really dark, mature Batman versus Superman, I was digging it because it took a level of understanding certain types of movies that work differently. They're not cotton candy, and like Marvel movies, in my opinion. And Justice League, sorry, I keep calling it Justice League, but Joss Whedon's Justice League, was cotton candy. They made it for the kids because they needed to meet their quota for the year.
Well, they always have to make their quota for the year.
For sure, but there's certain
Zach.
times where they postpone things, and they could have easily postponed this, and I don't know why they didn't.
Why? So where does that come from? Why could they have easily done it? Where do you get that from? Why is it easy?
I think that was like the same year that, if I remember correctly, maybe was it the same year that it came out? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it came out in September of 2017. Justice League came out November 2017.
Yeah, that made a shitload of money. Yeah. It made a shitload of money. So I
don't understand. What does that have to do with anything? What do you mean? What does it have to do with why it's easy to postpone a movie? I don't understand.
Because they already made the money for that year.
Yeah, like they did. They made way more than what they did in 2016.
I think guys like us think that maybe that's a boatload of money, right? But when you're operating at that level, there is no that's enough. We made enough.
For sure. Look at Disney, and I just heard that they're hardcore in debt. And for sure.
Christian, I want to give you the opportunity. What is a toxic fan, and can you tell me about, what do you think? Release the Snyder Cut. How many of them are toxic fans?
Yeah, I have to admit, a lot of people who are Release the Snyder Cut fans are toxic fans. I think a lot of people who aren't Release the Snyder Cut fans are toxic fans, and I think that it evens itself out. It really does. Whenever I post something, literally, I can post something on Twitter that says, "Man, I love Zack Snyder's Batman versus Superman. I hope that Warner Brothers releases the Snyder Cut," and I will get like I'm talking tweet after tweet after tweet after tweet of people just saying Zack Snyder sucks, his movies suck, and I'm like,
Mhm.
I didn't ask you, like I, and I think that when you intentionally try to belittle somebody or throw shade at somebody for something that is completely out of your control because it's completely opinion based whether you like something or not. I think when you're throwing shade at somebody and saying something sucks, that's when it becomes toxic fandom. I think I have become definitely somebody who's done toxic fandom, especially in Star Wars, because I hated The Last Jedi. I really freaking hated that movie. Like with every ounce of my being, I hated that movie.
Well,
And I've watched it over and over trying to like it, and I'm just like, I can't at all. And so when somebody says like, "Man, I love The Last Jedi. It's great," I immediately every fiber of my being wants to be like, "No, it sucks." Like, but I'm
Christian,
like, well, just let
Christian,
them have their.
I want to be respectful of your time, but this is definitely something
Mhm.
worth pursuing. I think. Do you have time to get into The Last Jedi?
I do. Again, I'm using things that are devices that are like dying on me, so I
Uh
might be
huh.
in and out. Like I'll
Okay.
switch
Well,
devices,
then
but yeah, I have time.
I'll definitely try to make it quick. Um, why was The Last Jedi bad? Why didn't you like it?
It honestly, stylistically, it looked great. I'm not gonna say that it didn't look good. Like the movie was poorly created, or they did a bad job on the way it was shot or edited or anything of the sort. That's not what I'm saying. As far as why The Last Jedi was bad, I think The Last Jedi was bad because of the choices that the characters made. And the one thing people always bring up is like, I can't believe Luke threw the lightsaber over his shoulder, and I'm like, well, yeah, that did happen, and that was slightly out of character, but it slightly wasn't at the same time, because Luke's done some pretty stupid stuff in the past. And I mean, he was a Jedi for what, maybe a year at most, like total, and then he just like stopped or something like that. Or no, it was probably more
Is
because
it
he trained
fair?
Ben.
What if
Yeah,
I
it
were
had
to
to have been. It had to have been more.
what if I were to tell you that we do not know Luke as he is. We do not know Luke after defeating the Empire, while watching his father die, redeeming himself, saving the galaxy, and then exiling himself for whatever reasons. We don't know this man, right?
We don't.
There's been
Yeah.
a delta, a giant gap of in between time between Luke as a young man versus grumpy Luke.
Old man Luke.
Right.
Yeah,
So we don't
exactly.
know
Yeah, yeah.
why can't we take his cues for what they from the place that they're coming from? Why can't we do that?
Well, honestly, and the thing is, like Luke Skywalker himself wasn't a huge bother to me. He really wasn't.
Okay.
Um, what one of the biggest bothers for me was Poe Dameron. Poe Dameron seemed very out of character, especially only having seen him in one movie. But in the first movie, the one that J.J. Abrams did, I think it was written by who was it written by? Was it written by Terrio? I don't
want to
remember.
say it was written by the same guy who wrote Toy Story 3 and Lawrence Kasdan, I want to say.
Lawrence Kasdan, yeah, Lawrence Kasdan did it. So here's the deal. Poe Dameron was he's like kind of the pseudo Han Solo for the mix, like he's the guy that wants to show everybody up and everything like that. And he's kind of cocky in the sense, but he's also incredibly noble. He drops everything to help people. That you could clearly see that in The Force Awakens. And even though he does it with like a grumpy attitude, he still does it. And the fact that he was just so like opposed to everything everybody was doing in The Last Jedi, I was like, come on, bro. Like, this is not the same character we saw in the last movie.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't stop there. Well, the main thing that really bugged me about The Last Jedi
Tell me.
was Leia. Oh, she bothered me so
Oh.
much. And it wasn't her performance. It wasn't anything. It was the way she was written. So Leia is force sensitive. And we've known this kind of, in the back of our head. We're like, okay, yeah, she's force sensitive. Like, oh, well, right. We've never seen her do it. But then the first moment that we actually see her do it, this noble princess who would do anything for her people, right? Like is like ahead of everybody else, like charging into battle. Like she's like, I'm gonna make the right decision. The first time we see her use the force, is to save herself.
What do
It's
you
a
mean?
selfish act.
What do you mean exactly?
And there was so many other people that could have been saved in that moment. She felt she had the force. She felt the moment that the ship was going to explode. She
Oh,
could
I
have
see.
done something, and she didn't. She ended up choosing to save herself, to let everybody die, to save herself, and to hope that something would come from it. And I was like, that is so not Leia. That is not the Leia that we've known from the last 3 movies, and then The Force Awakens. I mean, like The Force Awakens showed such the tender side of her because she became older. She was a mother. She understood what it meant, what lives were at stake, what this whole rebellion what meant, and like to see her completely in a selfish act. The very first time we see her use the Force was like, seriously, like what were you thinking? That is not Leia at all. And so that bothered me. Aside from the fact that the little boy at the very end of the movie had nothing to do with anything, and Ryan Johnson just put that in there, like for I guess somebody to pick up the pieces in the next movie, hoping that they would. I don't know because he wasn't in conversation with anybody else, to my knowledge, for the next movie.
Yeah.
I believe he said that. Like that's kind of odd
You know,
for
it's
him
really.
to just be like, "Well, I hope somebody picks this up." Like
I'm gonna let you have not let you, but I appreciate your opinion, and I think a lot of people agree with you, and so that's interesting. I do want to say that what's interesting is how Disney and I think Catherine Kennedy, is that her name?
Kathleen.
Kathleen, how they took this telephone approach to making the movie. You know, like JJ, do your thing, but there's no blueprint. And then he passes the baton to Ryan. Ryan, do your thing.
Yeah.
There's still no blueprint. They passed the baton. It was supposed to be Colin Trevorrow, right? But it didn't work,
Yes,
and he had a
Colin Trevorrow,
draft.
yeah.
And I think that's a very ballsy approach for something that is just so precious to fans, right?
Yeah,
And I
it
think
is.
I appreciate every cue that Ryan made. That was almost a direct where JJ would have went left, or where the story from Force Awakens would have went left, he went right, right? Like what you said about Leia. We've never seen her do a stunt with the Force before. I don't know if she had complete control over that. I don't want to get into weeds with that. It just seems like almost the Force kind of saved her. I don't know if it was. I don't know. Who knows? But
Also, it
even the
looked
stuff with
weird.
Poe, even the stuff with Rose Tycho, who's thrown in there, the stuff with the
Yeah.
Force sensitive boy at the end, to me, is like, yeah, no, what's his name? Snoke is not our big guy. So he and it's really good story. It's like telephone. Like, I'm gonna put the next installment that's supposed to wrap this up. I'm gonna make Ben Solo irredeemable, even though we kind of thought that somehow he's supposed to redeem himself, and he ends up doing it. I don't know if he earned it in the next movie, but he writes the characters in a corner, which in a second act I think you're supposed to do as a storyteller. That's my opinion. It's interesting how you said something very poignant, and I really want to highlight it on this episode of the podcast, that there are toxic fans amongst the Release the Snyder Cut community, and there are also toxic fans that are not in that community. And I think that's totally apparent.
I don't know.
I try not.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you perfect.
Yeah,
I
I can
can't
hear.
hear
I can
him.
hear.
I thought my iPad was dying, but I guess
I
not.
know,
I
me
don't
too.
know.
I thought-
don't know what's going on there, man. So
That was my
annoying.
internet or something.
That's so annoying. But it's not you guys.
Yeah.
I think I know what's going on.
You there?
Yeah, I know exactly what's going on. Sorry about that. But no, just to your point, Christian, you make a great point. There's toxic fans on both sides. There's a lot of emotions with Release the Snyder Cut. Here's my emotion with Justice League. It was a bad movie. The studio was dealt a bad hand. That's not how they wanted to do this. Let's be honest. When Zack made Man of Steel, it was supposed to be a standalone movie. I've told Jeremy this so many times. Where they messed up was, let's make this a universe. Let's just shortcut to what Disney's done with Marvel. Let's just jump to that. You can't shortcut that. Let's be honest. BVS was totally that. They made, one movie and then they jumped to like their Avengers, essentially. You could have called BVS the Justice League. I mean, you almost could have. Everybody's in it, and it's in it for fan service, and it's in it to shortcut to just kind of be like, look, we're going to do this,
Mm-hmm.
Zach signed up for that. But when Chris Nolan was EP on Man of Steel, which I'm a big Man of Steel fan, I loved it. It hit all my pleasure spots. It hit me in all the ways that I like, which is, Jeremy will say it's an adult, it's made for grown-ups. I just think it's like contemporary. I just think it's like updated. I just think it's, how do you tell a Superman story in the 21st century? To me, it was that, and I appreciated those risks, and I thought they paid off. But there was Easter eggs, and so I remember the Comic-Con months after Man of Steel, Zach teases, we might be doing like a Dark Knight Returns thing. Batman's going to be in this next one. Everybody got fired up, and how do you not? Because Man of Steel was a success. And then he makes that movie. And then he makes Justice League. I mean, he's doing the red carpet in Germany, and he's making Justice League on the BVS press tour. So this thing was rushed. I think Justice League, I cannot help but feel, and trust me, these aren't biases, because like I said, you guys know, I liked BVS. I liked Man of Steel. Big fan. They were great. I appreciated them. Both directed by Zack Snyder. I think Justice League was kind of doomed to fail from the beginning. It just didn't. It was rushed. You can't cheat and make the dice land on 12 to just get to the end. You can't do that. Look at Joker. I think part of the success of that movie is that it's not trying to world build. It's not essential to this overall big story. It's not episodic. It's not just one installment of this kind of glorified, like what Disney's done with Marvel. It's kind of like almost like television, right? Like every, what do they call it? Phase is a season. Joker didn't do that. It just did its thing, did its business, and it walked away. I think that adds to why we like that movie. I think that's why Man of Steel is also good, is it wasn't designed to be episodic. It was just, here's this one and done thing. Yeah. Justice League had a lot of work to do that in its core is not going to be a good movie. I'll give you an example. And this is kind of like the case that I want to make, is this movie was never going to be good. And whatever Zach shot, I hate to say, is probably doomed to suck. Not because I don't like Zach, not because I don't respect him, not because I don't think he has great ideas. I think he has great ideas. I think he's a visionary. I just so happen to believe that, this idea of let's just cut to our Avengers, I think maybe he thought that was a good idea, but it doesn't make for a compelling, cohesive narrative, right? There's a scene in Justice League where the Flash and Cyborg are like digging a grave. I think they're going to get Clark Kent out or something. And Cyborg, I don't know what the lines are. Maybe you know, Jeremy. The line is something like, here's my backstory. And Flash is like, that's very interesting. Here's my backstory, and it's supposed to be like this sort of good rapport between them. And I remember watching this in theater and thinking out loud, and you should never be really thinking out loud metatextually when you're watching a movie. It's usually a bad sign. But I remember thinking, why did they just tell us that? Why didn't they film that and make that a part of the story? That should have been its own movie. There's a lot of moments in that movie that are like that I kind of feel just in its nucleus were bad decisions. How can we not admit to that? There's this entire notion, whether if you're a toxic release the Snyder Cut fan or not, there's this idea that this is the better cut. It's the Zach cut. I don't know. Nobody knows if it's better. I think this movie in its bones was not gonna be great. If Zach and WB can't agree on this big arc, maybe there's a dark side thing, or like there's this nightmare sequence. Nobody agreed on where this was going. It reminds me of Star Wars on this telephone, like the telephone game of I'm going to whisper in your ear and then you whisper in their ear. And then you're in the weeds. You're not on the same page. That's what Marvel had. Say whatever you want about their individual films. They're often forgettable. But Kevin Feige had a big story he wanted to tell, and he told it. And I'm not a big Endgame fanatic. I thought Infinity War was way better. But Kevin Feige told his story and had his series finale the way he wanted to do it. You couldn't say, release the longer Endgame cut. No, this is the version that they wanted to release, right? It's very self-indulgent and long. And so I just don't think, and guess what? That took 12 years. You can't do that in in 5 years. From Man of Steel 2013 to Justice
BVS.
League was 4 years. You can't shortcut. You can't. You can't. And they tried to do it. I think this thing was sort of doomed to fail. I got that vibe with the initial Zack Snyder trailers, the ones that we know that Zack had his fingerprints all over. The movie wasn't even finished, but he got us excited anyways. I cannot help but feel that, no, you're rushing this. It didn't make, there wasn't a lot of, in my opinion, there wasn't a lot of it was sort of like a steak that just wasn't cooked enough. A lot of half-baked ideas that are Zack Snyder ideas, for sure, for his iteration of Justice League. I don't know if that would have been the best decision, man. And so all that, I did not mean to talk for so long, but as someone who not only doesn't care about the Snyder Cut, but I don't believe in this fantasy cut, and I certainly can't believe that it's a superior version. I just think fans were hurt so bad and so betrayed and had such a bad taste in their mouth that they'll take anything over that cut. And I want to just say that it's possible that cut, maybe it is better. It's a coin flip. It could easily be better. It could easily be dog shit. We don't know. And I think we'll never know. And I also will say it's probably best that we never know.
Yeah, I honestly don't think so, man. I think it's best to find out, so there can be an opinion for both. Because I think what you're saying is it probably will happen. You know what I mean? There will be divided fans. Like, no, the Josh Whedon cut or whatever, the cut that he helped out in, or the first initial theatrical cut that they released is better than Zack Snyder's. Of course, that will happen. But I mean, I want to find out for myself to see if that cut actually sucks. As for people talking about it and saying it was amazing, including like Jason Momoa and stuff, I mean, that's their own opinion, and that's fine. But I mean, I want to see it for myself. That's all that I want. I just want to see it for myself, even if it's a Wolverine Origins type of movie, the leaked version.
Totally. I don't think we, as consumers, are entitled to that. I don't think we deserve it just because we demand it. It's like a baby who's crying because, it's like my daughter who she doesn't get the toy she wants from her McDonald's Happy Meal. I don't drive back to the McDonald's and say, I need an Elsa toy, goddammit. The truth is, she's going to have to live with that Sven, and that's what it's going to be. Eat shit. That's the way it goes. You don't just, no. And if I acquiesce to her crying or whatever, I think that's bad parenting on my part, because I'm sending the wrong message. I'm sending, if you cry, you'll get whatever you want. I don't think the audience, the fans, the consumers, are entitled to that. Like it's air or clean water. Like, it's not, it's not. And so they be acting like it is. And I sneer at the notion of that. So to tie this around, because I don't want to go in circles, you had said in that text message something like, man, all you, as if we're Holocaust deniers, all of you release the Snyder Cut, anti-Snyder Cut people, which that's not what we are. We don't have lunch together.
I didn't say anti, but yeah.
But no, you didn't. But you're like, the people who don't believe in it, you guys are going to be wrecked. And here's the thing. Yeah. Let me tell you this. This is what the toxic fandom that I'm talking about. I'm not your opposition, and neither are people who don't care, I'm agnostic about this. Like, we are not your opposition. Marvel fans who only love Marvel movies are not your opposition. Like, this is the dessert that you want to have. This is your health, essentially. What you choose to put in your body is really your choice, It doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
Don't
the reason why
don't
I said
tread
that,
on me, brother.
The reason why I said that, though, is because back in Austin, I remember having a conversation with you about it, and I think Dave was there too, about it, and like how Jason Momoa talked about it. You know what I mean? And I remember you just telling me, like, no, it doesn't exist. the cut that we saw was the best cut we could have seen.
Mhm.
And ever since, like with you, when me talking to you about this topic, I was just like, no, I honestly feel like you're wrong about it. Like there is more to it. There just is more to it. So now that there's like 3 years have passed and there's more evidence on it, I'm saying all those people are about to get wrecked because now it's being talked about. It's still being talked about. Nobody's talking about Infinity War and Endgame anymore. At least to me, the people that I follow, they don't.
Well, yeah, because they got a product. That's why. Like the story ended. And to me, for me,
I mean, it ended, but it didn't.
The Justice League story ended. I got it. It's Henry Cavill and bad CGI fake mustache thing like that. It's that, and that's what it is. And when I see Shazam and I see Superman make a cameo, I'm like, oh, this is still canon. When I see Wonder Woman 2, this is canon. When I see Birds of Prey, this is canon. And so they're continuing to go with that universe. And so guess what? That's the cut that is canon. That's the cut you have to take, man. It's like when Captain America in the comics, Hail Hydra, which I like that Endgame. I like that Easter egg. It was like I popped so hard. It was like one of the biggest pops for me. But fans hated that. That's not Captain America. And then but guess what? It's canon. And then they were like, nah, he was just kidding the whole time or whatever. And it was like a double cross or whatever. It's like, it's funny. Like, it's like professional wrestling. When the bad guy is being a jerk, you're supposed to boo him. Like it's all part of the show. And you have to move on, even if you don't like what they did. Even if your favorite wrestler loses, yeah, he lost, and you have to move on. There's no rematch. There's no life moves on. There's a lot of fans who can't move on, and that to me is like, definitely worth somebody like me who's agnostic in this entire conversation. It's like, what happened to you? Like there's nothing that could happen. They're making a new Matrix movie. I love the Matrix. Yeah. Say the new one sucks. It's not going to ruin the movies I grew up with. Yeah. It'll suck, and that'll just be another day.
Well, say it's better than all the ones you grew up with.
Awesome. This is why it's my favorite, franchise. It's very possible to have the same team and everything. My point is, like, I'm not entitled to it. There are some times when life is so good that you're like, we don't deserve this, And
why do you think it's being made?
I don't know.
If it's because the people don't want it, and because...
What do you mean? The Matrix?
Yeah, because Keanu Reeves is a big fucking thing right now. Why wouldn't they want to do it? Right?
He's always been a big fucking thing. He's never not been a big fucking thing.
For sure. But I mean, there was a while there where he was kind of a little away.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I think so. Like when he did that one.
I think 2019 was like the year of Florence Pugh and Keanu Reeves for sure. But he's like, it's like, it's like Tom Brady. Tom Brady was never not a great thing, Yeah, he didn't win a Super Bowl every year, but guess what? He's still hot shit. But
for sure, I think it's fan service, because the people want it.
They wouldn't make it if they didn't think they weren't going to make any money, of course.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. I bring it up because I'm a big fan, but if it sucked, it's just a movie. There are release the Snyder Cut people that I'm like, are you going to shoot me?
Oh God!
Like,
I'm not one of those at all.
What happened to you? It gets a little scary. Yeah. It's okay that things suck sometimes. Don't put your entire life and stock into a piece of entertainment that defines you. Like that's, guess what? Like I like, gosh, what's a good version of this? I like Kanye West. Big fan. Like all his music. His last record was not great. It's probably his most not great. I'm okay to say that. Dave asked me, he's like, what do you think about Jesus is King? And I was like, it's the first record I've heard of his that I didn't instantly love. He's like, I thought you were going to say you loved it. Because he thought I was like this stan that was just going to be like, I love it no matter what. I love it. It's like, no, sometimes things aren't what you want it to be. That's life, you know. That's also part of growing up, is just knowing like not everything's perfect. Your football team doesn't play a perfect game every year, you know. But at the same time, like, don't flip a car over because your team lost and be like, Dez caught it 10 years later. That's sad. That's pathetic to me. So that's, I suppose, my final thoughts on this whole thing. I don't know if we got anywhere, but I definitely am dubious about this idea of like evidence. Everything's speculation. It's all speculation. There is no evidence.
Well, let's
You
say
know,
it does come out, right? And you love it.
I don't.
And
I'm not gonna line up to watch it.
why? Well, I mean, you just talked about what if it sucks. Now, what if you love it? Now, what if it's way better than the original cut that came out? How would that make you feel? Even though you don't care.
It would be bittersweet because here's this version that is good. Obviously, I would still say this is not the version that could have came out November whatever 2017, right? If you delayed it 6 months, you know, if it took 4 years to make, you couldn't tell me that, yeah, this was the version. If they postponed it, it wouldn't have been the same version. It couldn't have been. You needed this movement to make this version, especially if in 2020 he's going to refilm stuff, supposedly.
Yeah.
If he's going to do that, it's not going to be the version that we were supposed to get. It's like what Christian Blake said. There is no cut. It's a different movie.
Yeah.
It's a liquid narrative that is and like there's this lore and mythology that the fans have created that are building Zach up to do what he's doing right now. So it would be bittersweet that here's this true Frankenstein version of a movie that, let's just say, like you said, rocks my socks off. Wow, it's amazing. This is a great movie. But it doesn't count because it's not canon. It's not the one that came out. Like nothing nothing can ever change that. No, Jeremy, like nothing can change that. You know, you're asking me like, what if you were born a woman though? And it's like, look, but I wasn't,
No.
you know.
So what if
The reason why I say that is
right?
because like, guess what?
And they make a sequel of it.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
So is it? You don't think so? And what if it does?
I think Robert Pattinson he's the new Batman, you know, and I think Ben is like, been there, done that. He's passed the torch. He says good on Robert, you know, and that's great. And Cavill is still up in the air, you know. I don't see it happening. But what you're asking me are a lot of what ifs that I can't believe in. Like, God is way easier to believe in than this. It's just God.
For sure, but I mean, it's also just easy to say that the cut's gonna suck. Even though we haven't seen it.
I don't think it's one way or the other, and no one can prove either. You know, nobody can prove that this version is going to be better.
Either way,
but no one can prove that it's going to suck. Nobody can prove that it even exists. You know, so it's all speculation, and I think fans, they don't know this yet, but trust me, holding on to this is probably better than if you got the real version.
Because I've thought about that, and
this version that you guys have created in your head, nothing's going to live up to that. That's just too much hype. Nothing's gonna live up to
I get what you're saying, but then I think back to the people that have said that they have watched it and they have seen the cut that he has, like Jason Momoa,
Kevin Smith.
You know, even though it's an assembly cut, I get it. I would want to watch that. You know what I mean? Like, I just would. And if that's what they need to reshoot and finish, that's great. You know what I mean? But I honestly think it's totally possible for them to make a sequel. It'll just be a course direction. They already did that. Might as well do it again. Especially if because that's where the money's pointing.
I don't know, man. I don't see how how is money pointing to the Snyder Cut? Is this a gut feeling? Is this speculation, or where is the hype?
I mean, like what you're saying about the toxic fandom. You know,
you mean
the vast majority of it.
You mean the Twitter hype?
I mean the Twitter, the Instagram, the Vero, the Facebook. Yeah, the Twitter, everything.
I don't necessarily see money there. I don't.
It depends on how they release it.
You know what's interesting? We talked about The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, and I think they're very similar because they're on both sides. No matter what kind of fan you are, it'll be very hard to find someone who likes everything.
Divisive. Yeah.
there's usually, you either like this one or you like that one, right? And why did I bring this up? Oh, the box office showed that Rise of Skywalker was not successful. I think The Last Jedi made more money. There you go. And so guess what? It had the support, the Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Vero, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, whatever. It had the support of fuck Ryan Johnson. Dude, JJ's going to fix it. He's going to fix it, man. It had that, and it made less money. So, I think the optics are definitely, I think the vocal minorities make more noise, but
Yeah.
I don't know if they show up to the box office. I think they just show up to Twitter to bitch about things. Christian's still in the comments. It's a shame that he has a life. Who has battery life at almost 1 a.m? I can't believe we're still doing this, man. But yeah, just like I kind of thought with this podcast, nothing's going to be solved, nothing's going to be resolved. But I think you made your case. This is going to be my last, and then I'll let you take as much time as you want to have your final thoughts here. But so here's my final thoughts. I think this is an emotional.
With this podcast, nothing's going to be
Hey, there he is.
solved.
Hey, Christian, put some headphones in your device, man. And I'll let you have some final thoughts too. So Christian, please take your time. This is my last thing as
Cool.
as the opposition, the anti release a Snyder Cut person. It's like, no, I'm just agnostic about it. Like, I can accept that we got a bad movie and move on. I can accept that with Autumn Snyder, nobody saw that coming. It was terrible, and it made an impact on a movie that so many fans, I think, were walking into ready to appreciate, and they didn't get to appreciate the movie that they built in their heads, and they were hyped about. I guess I take umbrage with people that are entitled to a release to what I'll call a fantasy cut, because I don't think that the version that is in people's heads will ever be satiated. I don't think it'll hit that dopamine the way people are holding on to it right now in their heads. Sometimes movies are bad and you move on. Anytime I see online release the Snyder Cut, somebody posts about it or sends me a link to it, Jeremy, I feel like, am I being punked? Like, is the joke on me? Am I like an old grandpa that is like, stop it, and my reaction to that is just like, we're in 2020. That doesn't matter. I left that in the past 3 years ago. There's nothing in my life. No stand-up comedian, no wrestling, no music act. There's nothing I can think of where I'm so entitled that I'm owed a different iteration of a product. Like, I don't buy Nikes or an Apple product and think, nah, give me that iPhone 4. What is this shit? I don't do that, like, you just move on, you move forward. And so I'll say this, because it would be ridiculous if I didn't, but I have been put in a position where I put money into a movie that I made that I don't have a copy of, and you've never seen me in public or in private say, release the Knives Monroe cut. There's not, look, what it is what it is. You take the L, you take the loss, and you keep on going. You get on your horse and you keep on going. And I wish fans, could do the same. I know it's hard. Trust me, I've lived it. I've been on the other end. I've lived it. It sucks. But, that's okay. Go watch Birds of Prey, and I hope you have a good time. And go watch, I don't know what's next on the slate, Wonder Woman, and I hope you have a good time. And it's okay that sometimes you have bad movies. Guess what? Incredible Hulk in Marvel's catalog, not great. The Ed Norton one, not great. It is what it is. Iron Man 2, I think it's okay. There's some movies that just aren't great. It is what it is. I don't think they've ever, no pun intended, had an abomination like Justice League. That's okay too, man. Here's the thing. What movie was it? For some people, Last Jedi is that. For some people, Rise of Skywalker is that. It's all subjective. There are people who like Justice League. What about them? Those are my final thoughts. Jeremy, Christian, you guys take it from here.
You go, Jeremy.
All right. So those fans that like the Justice League aren't aware of the behind the scenes. Most of them, they're not aware about what happened, you know, and the tragedy and all that. So there's that. Me, what the Snyder Cut means to me is it's just kind of like what I said at the beginning of the podcast. It's a little more deeper, like what you said, what happened to you about a studio just taking over and taking over your project, and then you just end up not liking the final product, you know? Uh, that's just an injustice, you know? It shouldn't happen. And it's sort of like when you're a person like Zack Snyder or you're a person like Jason Moore, Henry Cavill, Ben Affleck, it's sort of like wrestling, like John Cena, you know? You've impacted millions, if not maybe billions of lives. You know, you have a sense of duty and responsibility to them. You kind of have that feeling. So when Zach hears this huge group of people that believe in him and love him and want to be there for him and support him, I mean, why would he say no to that? You know what I mean? Like why would he? Especially if he has millions of people to back him up. You know what I mean? Like I think anybody would want that. Anybody would love that. I mean, I'm one of those fans for Knives with what happened to him with one of his films, you know, where I would want that cut, and I would cry and bitch for it because I was there and witnessed, you know, and I've seen it too. So to see it happen to one of my favorite directors of all time too, not including Knives, right? Uh, is it sucks. It really sucks. So to actually see a movement where I can identify with people just like with Christian is amazing to me because I don't get this a lot. I don't get a lot of people that I can relate to about these types of things. You know, especially in the valley.
Yeah.
You know, it's very hard. Um so let the director and writers and editors do what they want to do. You know what I mean? None of this two directors, you know, just keep it old school, you know, and treat every director like if they're a James Cameron or a Martin Scorsese, because everybody started somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, just like all those greats. Um, having said that, I guess I'll end it with this. I don't picture the Snyder cut. It doesn't matter to me how the movie looks as long as it's a Zack Snyder movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, uh, really quick. I mean, even when you write a script, that first initial script, usually from my research that I've seen behind the scenes with movies and stuff, isn't even the final script that they have. You know what I mean? They have a script, and then when they film, it's totally different.
Yeah.
It's like a totally new, different script, just like Joker. You know what I mean? Like they majority of that film they wrote on set. You know what I mean? And they've said that, which is beautiful. Um, so to me, the version, oh, we're not going to get the initial first version Zach was going to release. I don't care. Just release what Zack Snyder's, what's in his head, because
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's what I care about.
Yeah.
Well put, Christian.
I kind of wanted to tag off of what Jeremy said. It's an injustice to him. I don't think it's an injustice to any of us. I don't think any of us as fans should be entitled to anything other than the fact that we paid for a movie that we thought that we were going to get and we didn't. I would say about, I think 85 or so percent of the shots in the first trailer of Justice League aren't even in the final movie itself. The Come Together trailer, yeah, like none of that stuff is in the movie. And so we bargained and for a movie that we wanted to see in theaters that we saw a trailer of. Even the final trailer of the movie, there's still shots in the final trailer of the movie that aren't in the final cut of the movie. One of the most blatant ones is the very first line in the trailer, in the last trailer, where she says, as she goes up to Clark and or no, yeah, she walks up to Clark. Lois walks up to Clark and he says, "I'll take that as a yes, the ring." And that wasn't even in the movie. And I'm like, oh man, like that was a tragedy, you know? And I figured that scene was going to be absolutely breathtaking. I was excited about it. I was excited about the prospect of everything that I had heard. and then to not get it, I was like, man, that doesn't necessarily suck for me because I still got a movie. While yes, I'd rather see Zack Snyder's version of the movie, what really sucks is that Zack Snyder didn't release the movie that he wanted to. And to my understanding, almost every single time he is asked, have you seen the movie? He says no. So I don't know how true that is. He may be trolling and just saying like, no, I haven't seen it because like he knows that that isn't his cut of the movie or his version of the movie that he wants to release. Maybe he's trolling. I know even people have posted something along the lines of like a scene from the movie, and he'll comment on Vero and he'll put like, that wasn't in my movie. Like that's not in the movie. That movie hasn't come out. And it's funny because like I feel like he's trolling at that point. But and so I'm kind of like, did he see the movie? Did he not? Either way, the point is that I think that he deserves a chance to be able to put the movie out that he wanted to. I mean, I take it back to Andy Muschietti. Andy Muschietti is a director that has been with Warner Brothers for some time now. He's directed a few films here and there, some horror films. I know he did Mama with Jessica Chastain, fantastic film. I thought it was great. And then he moved on and he did It. And when he signed up for It, he signed up for 2 movies of It. And they were like, well, let's see how the first one does. They didn't want to label it chapter 1, and then the movie ended and they put chapter 1 at the end of the movie and it did great. Everybody loved it. And so they said, all right, give him part 2, like let's see what he can do. And you can tell they didn't do what they did to Zack Snyder to Andy Muschietti, because he released a 3-hour movie about a clown eating children. So you can clearly tell that they didn't trim down his movie. They didn't ask for reshoots. They didn't do any of that. And what's funny is that movie wasn't even half as good as the first one. I love the It movies. I do. I think they're beautifully crafted, but I can tell you that part one is masterful as opposed to part 2 is just, oh, that was a good movie. And the studio took a risk and they did it. And did they kind of fail? Yeah, because it didn't make as much money. It didn't do as well. The DVD sales aren't doing as well. I mean, it's not as good of a movie. It wasn't as big of a hit as the first one was. The kids, like everybody loved the kids. Everybody loved that film. So to me, either way, Warner Brothers still stuck their neck out and said, well, we believe in this director and we believe in his vision no matter what. And we're going to let him do his thing. We're going to let him release a 3-hour movie about a clown eating kids. And they did it. Why couldn't they have just done that with Zack Snyder? I mean, they didn't even let him do that with Batman versus Superman. His final film that he wanted to release to the public had to get postponed to Blu-ray. Why didn't they just release the 3-hour cut in movies in the theater? Like Endgame did well. It's not like a 3-hour runtime was really going to hinder their making actual sales. Like, I mean, the Endgame is the biggest movie in the entire world right now. And that movie was an even 3 hours. So you can't tell me that they looked at the runtime and were like, oh yeah, we're not going to make as much money because we're not going to have as many time slots in the theater. No, that's not what it was about. They just didn't like Man of Steel. And so because they didn't like Man of Steel, they were like, let's kind of fix Batman versus Superman. And then they fixed Batman versus Superman and nobody liked Batman versus Superman. So they were like, okay, well, let's just completely redo Justice League. And they did. And it really sucks because from my understanding, not only did they have a Justice League Part 1 and 2, but Zack Snyder says that he had a 5-film story arc. He had Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman, Justice League Part 1, Justice League Part 2, and then the final film, to my understanding, from what I've heard from him, was a movie called The Superman. And it was the complete story arc of Clark becoming the Superman that we know and that we love from comic books. He humanized him. He made him real, made him vulnerable, and he made him relatable to the point where you could watch the movie, watch these 5 movies, and understand what he went through in order to get to the point where he was the Superman that we know and love. So I'd love to see that. I feel like Zack Snyder is owed the studio because, I mean, didn't Man of Steel didn't do horrible. I mean, it made like what, 600-700 million. BVS did pretty decent, 800-900 million. Those are big tickets compared to like Birds of Prey that just made 300. Yep. That really stinks for Birds of Prey because it was a fantastic movie. It was so much fun, and it only made that much money. So you can't say that Zack Snyder's not raking in the money. He really is. Granted, it's not $1 billion, And so I guess a stingy studio would say that they didn't make money, but they're making money. And so for them to just completely pull the rug under this guy and say, like, we're not going to go with what you originally wanted to do, it's just, like Jeremy said, it's an injustice. So I think that Zack Snyder specifically, not us, but Zack Snyder is I think he's owed this. I think the studio should give it to him, even if they release it digitally, even if they release it on HBO Max, which would be a huge seller for HBO Max because I'm pretty sure nobody's going to sign up for that. I think they owe it to him to just release it and just let people watch it. If they don't make much money off it, okay, they're gonna make more money than they did before because they haven't released it. Just release it and let us enjoy it, and I'll move on. I'll be done with it. The fact is that I know that there's a movie that exists that's already shot that I haven't seen. Now, if this was like oh man, like I wish that they would just let him tell his story, even though he hasn't shot the whole movie yet, well, I'd be like, all right, well, I mean, it's over. Game over. I ain't gonna beg for this. But the movie's there. He has posted pictures of these film reels that literally say Justice League on them with a runtime of 214 minutes. And I'm like, why can I not see that? Why has Jason Momoa seen it? Why haven't I? Why has so-and-so seen it? Why haven't I? I want to see that. And I think Zack Snyder wants the world to see it. So just let the guy make his movie. Let the guy release his movie. And then we'll be done with it. Like you said, Knives, let's move on. Yeah, I'm down to move on. But let's move on after we get the product that's literally sitting on a shelf for people to see. I mean, like, it took, 30 years for them to release Donner's cut of Superman. Why can't they just release this one? Like, let them do it. Let them release it, and we'll be done with it. I won't beg for any more Zack Snyder content. I just want his story finished that he originally wanted to tell. And I know it's shot. I know it's done. If he wants to do additional photography, that's cool too. I don't even think that it's necessary. I just want what he has already. Even if, like you said, Jeremy, if it's unfinished like the Wolverine leak, I just want to see it. Even if they released a comic book of the storyline, I would read the heck out of that comic book because I just want the story. I want to know what happens, and I want to know what could potentially go, like, places, like where this could potentially go, even though it's not going to go anywhere. But then I would let my mind, like, go a million different places and wonder and just go on with the rest of my life thinking, man, this could have been cool. But I don't think that right now because the movie actually exists. Like, it's real. It exists. So I'm like, just give it to me, and then I'll be happy. So I guess that's where I'm at.
It's not like Justice League Immortal. Like, they didn't shoot
exactly.
anything.
They didn't shoot anything. They did maybe some test stuff, but that was it. Like, you can imagine where that movie would have gone, and you can live the rest of your life knowing, like, oh man, like, what could have been. But this isn't that scenario. This is like, bro, it exists.
Yep.
Like, it's there. I just want to see it, and once I see it, I'm good. Like, I'll do a Justice League Immortal kind of thing from there on out. What Zack Snyder could have done, and I won't ask for him to come back in and to shoot. There's some people that are rallying for Zack Snyder not only to get his cut released or his version of the movie released, but for him to come back and continue. And I'm like, well, that's a little too far. Like, I think that ship has sailed and we're done with that. But give us what's already there, So that's where I'm at with it. As far as toxic fandom, I just hope that people calm down. I don't think they ever will, but I hope that they do. And I hope that one day everybody can just think like, oh, you know what? They want this because they actually want that. And who am I to tell them that they should not like that? Just as I should not tell people not to like The Last Jedi if they do like it. That it is what it is. It's a movie. It's a part of the Star Wars franchise. Every time I watch the Star Wars films, I watch The Last Jedi and I get through it. Every time I watch the Marvel movies, I get through The Incredible Hulk. I get through Thor: The Dark World. I get through Iron Man 3 because they're part of the story and I'm okay with it. I don't care. It's content and it's fun and I just like superheroes. So that's me. I'm just a fan of what could be or what is out there and what I hope that they would give me. That's my take.
I appreciate you guys so much for doing the show with me. Let's talk about this off mic, that we can get into some super even weirder nerd stuff that I'm fascinated about. It's funny, like, we're going to sign off here and I'll say, there's this whole hashtag release the Snyder Cut. I would love, and I feel like the fans need it on both sides, Joss Whedon and Zack Snyder sit down and do a podcast about what went down. What's so hard about that?
Yeah.
I know that they could get sued and everything, and that's very real, but I would love to see that. Just sit down and talk about it. That'd be great. I love you guys. Thank you so much for listening. You know, for the live stream on Facebook. You guys can find this on Spotify. We'll catch you guys next time. Let's continue this conversation off mic.
All right.
Appreciate you guys.